Welcome to the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, I'm looking forward to today because in just 5 minutes, we're going to find out some of the stocks professional investors are watching that the rest of us might not have heard of or might not be thinking about.
Remember, this is general information only and doesn't take into account your personal circumstances, Michael, especially you. You should always get professional advice before making investment decisions. Matthew Kidman is the principal of Centennial Asset Management, a regular here on the show. Matthew, you keep an eye on a lot of different companies. Can you take us through some of that you like that maybe the rest of us haven't paid so much attention to?
Hi, Sean. I definitely try to, and hopefully no one's heard of any of these companies. So the first one I've got is a deal software company out of Australia. It's gone global. It's called Ansarada. The code is AND, and it's got a market cap about of 150 million. Got some cash on the balance sheet, but is leveraged to a rising market and a market that does a lot of deals because that's when you employ the software. That's the first one I've got. Let's move into the industrial sector. Another one I like is Maxi Group. Maxi Group used to provide you trailers and trucks, but these days it basically does truck parts and recently made an acquisition, getting good margin increase in a tough market. As we know, inflation's eating away at margins. Market cap of about 140 million, code MXI. I think there's 30 or 40% in that if they can execute.
Wow. Good two to start with. What about another couple?
Okay, let's go over to Western Australia and the mining services industry. Engineering company called Lycopodium. We've owned this for quite a while now. The code's LYL. Got a market cap of about 430 million. Got a cash-rich balance sheet. It's got almost 90 million on the balance sheet. They're an engineering company. They effectively build mines. They design them. They outsource the building, but they oversee it, and they're growing quite rapidly at the moment. We like that one. Another one in the mining sector, but going back into software, is RPM Global, code RUL. They basically provide software for the running of mines right around the world. They've got big clients like BHP and Rio and various gold groups around the world. And it's gone into profitability, so that's nice. That's what you need in software companies. And it's growing quite nicely. And I think this is a candidate for a takeover at some stage.
Okay, how do you find these stocks? I'm going to ask you for another one, but before we get there, how do you find these stocks? Because none of those four, I do this show every day, none of those four have I heard of.
Well, that was the idea. So how do we find them? We go outside and we look under the rock and under the garbage. No, well, that's our job. We've just got to find them. We've got a lot of people talking to us, a lot of brokers, a lot of corporates. So we sit here and people talk to us every day and we search around. Yeah, that's part of the job. That's a big part, actually.
Okay, give me one more before we wind up our 5 minutes.
This one everyone's going to know about because it's a brand name, but it's a small little retailer, Beacon Lighting. Beacon Lighting has been, like most retailers, been struggling. We've had higher interest costs, obviously. Retail's, after a boom during COVID's come off its peak. Beacon's in an interesting position, especially if you believe that housing will recover over the next 2 years because it basically looks after your ceiling, fans, lights, and so on. That's one part of it. It's got 120 odd stores around Australia and it's going to grow. It still can do 180, but it's also got some growth arms. It's opened a tradie division. So a bit like your Mitre 10, you can pull up, you're a registered tradie. You can buy with a discount straight out of Beacon, which is great because they're fitting lights. They're a big distribution point for Beacon. And then also they've gone offshore. Believe it or not, Australian lights, fans, light decorations are light years ahead of places like the USA. And so we think there's plenty of upside. And I think that a bit like we saw with Breville going back a decade ago, our kitchen appliances were definitely at a higher grade than the Americans. And we're feeling the same thing here. That's a smaller part of the business, but a growing part. So we think that's a nice play into a housing recovery with some growth options hanging off it as well.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for being part of Fear and Greed Summer.
Thanks, Sean.
That was Matthew Kidman, principal of Centennial Asset Management, with a couple of great ideas, Michael, if you want to take a bit of a punt on some very small stocks, perhaps that you haven't heard of.
Yeah, and as always, you should get professional advice before making any investment decisions. I actually had to turn my microphone off, Sean, you would have seen. I was actually making too much noise, taking furious notes with my pencil.
Scribbling.
Yeah, it was actually. I was actually drowning out Matthew with my scribbling noises of writing down everything he was saying. It's a fascinating interview. Great chat. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
That's it for today. Make sure you hit follow on the podcast. There's a new episode every day. Regular business news back from January 15. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed.